Well, there's times where your whoop will tell you, like, I don't know how you're alive.
Yeah, totally.
You know, because they'll talk about your sleep or your
it's like
drinking or eating.
get to bed quickly or you might die. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking about it, and Stacy's listening to me. She goes, "Why are you doing that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm trying to help.
You
out.
want to be helpful.
Yeah, I want to be helpful." And she goes, "Yeah, but you are nowhere near good at that. Like, why? And I'm like, I know. I that's a pivot for us, like a simple pivot, right?
Oh, totally.
A lot of times it's the simplest things, us pivoting, that can make the biggest impacts.
Yep. John says it all the time. Tiny hinges swing big doors. Koby Sway here. I'm here with Adam, like always. Today we're going to talk about pivoting or die. I think it's a pretty good topic. We have the market right now in the real estate industry is all about, chaos, and no one knows what's going to happen. Everyone's guessing, realtors commission, buyers commission, how's that going to change? And, we run a lot of different companies, and I feel confident that what's never going to stop is change, and people that continue to do what they did yesterday are going to die, right? So I think this is a pretty good topic.
Yeah, because like when we're looking at our numbers, like sometimes, like, and I know we've talked about this before, like we're sometimes skewed because for the most part we're always performing at or a better than the previous year.
Yeah.
Right. And then we always try to keep like agent count in check too. Like, is that because we've added more agents, or like last year we had 5 less agents, I think, than the previous year, and we still came really close.
Yeah.
I mean, we're pretty much right at even. And then this year, we're actually really outperforming
last year. And I think we have less agents even than last year.
Yeah. So, but so the big thing that I'm kind of taking away is, so again, sometimes we're a little bit blind to some of it, but you look at like what the whole market's doing. And then also individual agents on our team,
yes.
because there are agents that are newer that are crushing it. And some of our existing veteran agents are not doing near as good as they were too. And there are some of them that are starting to pivot because they realize, if I don't pivot, I'm going to die here in this market. So that's really good to see. But as I'm talking to others, like even like, you can pull that report of what your last 12 months of business has been for every agent.
Yeah.
And it is interesting to see who's on that list, like under $5 million in production. It's a lot of people that I actually wasn't expecting to see. But now I don't know, are they going through personal reasons? Do they have another job?
Sure.
Are they going a different direction? Like someone could say that about me, because I'm, it'll be interesting to see how I finish out personally, because I go back and forth with like investments, and then doing it with, either buying houses, flipping houses,
sure.
or helping out clients. So, we all could have things like that. And then you got the NAR stuff. You got interest rates. I think most of us thought interest rates were going to be going down by now, and that's definitely not showing to be the case. I mean, I would say the cost to do business today, but it's been like this forever. It's just every year gets more and more. The cost to sell something, the cost to sell your widget has gone up tremendously.
Yes.
And that is the hard thing to manage and figure out, like, and then one thing that Stacy and I, and this is my fault, we don't do very often, is really diving into expenses.
Yep.
Like, okay, what could we cut? What are we spending money on that we shouldn't? And what are we not spending money on that we should be?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So trying to always analyze that too is something. So that's one thing that her and I and you are going to start really kind of going into as well. But I just think from an agent perspective, it's like, but that's been like this for at least a year. Like,
well, I think COVID really made it super easy to be a realtor, and it created such bad habits. And whether we're forgetful or we built bad habits, either way, real estate agents were not doing the basic things they needed to do, which was prospecting, which was going out and marketing themselves, because it was so easy to do their job. And it's the same with our mortgage lenders, and they do a great job for our company. I don't mean our mortgage lenders at our company. I mean, mortgage lenders in general lost what they were supposed to be doing, which was prospecting, meeting clients, meeting realtors. The business just got so simple, right? And I think that even like you mentioned, some of our veterans, the reason why they're struggling is because they're starting to forget what they used to do 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and I feel like that cycle happens a lot when you get successful or you get to a certain success. You have to go through this check period of like, oh, this is how I got here.
Yep.
And that could take 2 months or that could take a whole year to figure out that pain. I've been there many times. Like you forget like, oh, it took these actions. And normally it's like, we all know it's like the most basic stuff.
Yeah.
The boring stuff.
The boring stuff that no one wants to do. Because there's always going to be a new, cool, sexy thing that you'll get an email or a text on that you think will solve all your problems, right? Like I get them all the time. And what it ends up costing you is more money, more time, more resources, and it doesn't solve the actual problem. The problem is doing the work, but you think there's a shortcut.
Yeah, or like even like I go into like certain and I'm looking over here to see if Stacy can remind me, but it was Alex Hermosi or Chris, this Chris guy. I think his last name starts with a W or something, but at any rate, like, you know, like I love my cold plunge. Like I love it. Like I don't necessarily have a morning routine, but I love to do my cold plunge like every day. It resets me. I got to get a workout in every day. But Alex Hermosi or this Chris guy had said like, you know, back in the day, there were no cold plunges. People that hardly even worked out. It was literally, you know, cigarettes and scotch or drinking. And like, that's how America was built, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't take this fantastic morning routine or you have to do these certain things to become successful. It just takes good old fashioned work.
Yep.
And I think everyone's always looking for a cheat code too. And then sometimes, but that also then it adds to this busyness of like, where it's like, well, it does just take certain activities. Like generally it's like 3 activities. You stay focused on that and it compounds tremendously over time.
It's huge.
And I have to remind myself that too.
Yep.
Now I will say though, sometimes that pivots. Okay, there's times where I got to work on this and there's times I got to work on this for a certain period of time too.
Yeah. It's just that pendulum swinging in and out of things, right? It's just like same with your family. There's going to be times where you're pulling away from your family because you're busier with work. So then you got to pull back from your work to dive back into family. Let's say you're not putting them first, or maybe it's religion, but there's always going to be something that gets in the way. What I found interesting was I heard a quote recently that said work-life balance doesn't exist. And I feel like people that want to run towards a work-life balance are going to be the most unproductive people because they're constantly trying to figure out ways where they can enjoy their lives, right? Of course, you want to enjoy your lives and your money that you're putting into. But if you don't have any money to do those things, you end up stressing yourself up so much. So I guess my point is you've got to find a way to enjoy your work and enjoy your personal life. And if they commingle, right? Like I just took a trip, for example, and 25 to 30% of the trip, Amanda and I were working and people were giving us a hard time on the trip. They're like, why are you working so hard? Or why are you doing this? It's like, well, why do you question my ability to produce income and produce money when your job has the ability to turn it off? But who do you think is earning more money? Someone that's productive, producing and working off the clock per se, or people that have the ability to shut off and not do work, right? It's usually people that are going to be working all the time are producing the most amount of production.
Yep.
I find that kind of fascinating. The work-life balance topic always comes up, but I don't understand that.
Yeah, no, I don't believe in work-life balance at all. I know Stacy doesn't either, so it's probably good that I know you and Amanda are similar in that too.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
I think it's too hard when you're like in a business or run a business, things like that.
But let's talk about like some pivots.
Yeah,
maybe.
What's the actual pivot?
What are some of the pivots that you either we've made or we plan on making?
So the thing that comes to mind, like talking about the NAR stuff, I definitely think us, which we are already going deep with this, is number one, when you're talking about the market's change, like instead of having 10 people in your pipeline, you might need to have now 30 people in your pipeline. It probably needs to be triple to quadruple the amount of people in your pipeline than what it was a year and a half ago. So that's the
interest rates has forced people to not be so now.
Yeah. Like, and I truly do believe there are a lot of people that are just on the sidelines. They're waiting.
Yes.
And they're going to see what happens. And then when we get close to this election, people are going to wait to see who's going to get in there.
Yep.
No matter what side of the fence you're on, people will wait to see what happens every election year. So the things I think as far as pivoting is making sure you're making your team, building that pipeline. That's always a must, in my opinion. If we're just talking real estate sales or us buying houses or whatever it is, you just got to put in more work to find those people. But I think also really going deep with our presentation.
Yes.
To buyers and sellers of understanding here's how this is going to change our industry.
Yep.
And what to expect. So on the buyer side, It's a little bit more in depth. It's a little harder, in my opinion, because you have to now explain to that buyer once this change happens, which got pushed back to August.
Yep, mid-August now.
Well, to really show your value and why you're collecting your 2.4 to 3%. I'm using that range because I know I'm sure everyone in our marketplace is going to be different to a certain extent, but fairly close. But like, why are you charging that money? And then that buyer, if that seller's agent isn't willing to pay that out, how, like, talking through with that buyer, how that's going to look to them, how it's going to financially affect them. And then talking about my chair's squeaking. And then talking about like what all comes with that value.
Yeah.
Like, you know, showing a certain number of houses, negotiating, like taking you from start to finish. And we're not just glorified door openers, right? Like going through, like, we might not show you everything, but now we will definitely be making sure we put this in front of you so you know, hey, we don't just sell you this house and we step back. There's a lot of back end stuff that goes onto it, right?
You're talking title, you're talking mortgage, you're talking insurance, you're talking just the aspect of moving into the house and having it look a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And shoot, like, and not that you can, like, people will probably hate me for saying this, but like the mental stress that you can take on working with any client is a lot. It can be daunting. It can really spit you up, chew you up, spit you out, right?
Well, and just to tell you this, like, again, we were on vacation, we were out of the country, and my wife got a call, right, from a client, and she was crying on the phone, and she spent an hour and a half talking to her that her husband was, they're getting divorced, and they have certain issues and things going on, and Amanda was troubleshooting with this person for 90 minutes about maybe renting a house, maybe selling their property, where they could get a job. They've never had a job before, right? Like, should a real estate agent explain how to get a job? No, she's her friend.
Yeah.
The reason why she called her is because you are creating a relationship. It's not, hey, here's a house. Do you want to buy it? Yes or no? And you do this too. We preach all the time is we want our people to be problem solvers and to build a relationship, a lifelong relationship with their clients. And so I know just on that trip alone, man, it took 2 phone calls from people that one was unpleasant and one was very pleasant, very happy with and they just wanted to spend 15 minutes talking about all the renovations they did on their house.
Mm-hmm.
So that mental thing is huge.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's hard to put a price tag on that, right? No. And you're not going to necessarily go tell a client that during a transaction, well, it's the mental stress I take on. That's why I get paid this. It's not that. It's part of it. But like, you know, there's all these other things. Like even Rachel Walker on our team, she's put together a very impressive list of everything. I mean, she's spelled out broke it down the ridiculous of everything that she's done, which is actually really impressive. And that's one thing she's going to be using with her clients for sure. But yeah, so going through, like, making sure you're talking about that day one, essentially, or it's going to be very close to day one, because especially once this change happens, we have to have them sign a contract. And then it's going to be combating with all of the competitive services that will be out there. Hey, I'll do this for 0.5% or 1% or whatever it is. Now, there's always been a downward pressure on commission, so that's nothing new. It's just this is a new downward pressure commission that is going to be openly all in front of everyone's face, and it's going to be in the news for a while. So it's trying to pivot that, and then seeing how those discount services pan out. I could see, because even the discount service today, when you're talking about listing a house, a lot of those folks end up now, not during COVID, take out the COVID years, but a lot of those services end up listing with a full service brokerage because they're like, okay, this didn't work, or we didn't get as much as we wanted, or there was issues.
Or they did more work than they expected.
Yeah, so I see the same thing happening with that when you're talking on the buyer side. I think on the seller side, it's easy. It's just like, hey, you talk about the advantages of why we would advise paying out to a buyer's agent, but it's not, I don't think that's as hard of a conversation. I really do think the buyer side commission conversation will be the hardest. Now, back on the seller side, if you start having a bunch of agents that decide not to offer a payout, that will just make everything, because then it'll go back on the buyer side, making that a very difficult conversation. But again, that's why we just have to be very well prepared and versed and all these different scenarios that could happen to make sure you're explaining that to your buyer.
Yeah, it's just having a plan of attack. I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, it just with technology and AI and the way everything's moving so fast, I think at the end of the day, as long as you have the ability to adapt, that's huge. And we know a lot of real estate agents that are leaving the business are not willing to adapt. I mean, even last year, there was a lot of teams or brokerages that lost a lot of money and weren't successful because they weren't willing to make the change or do certain changes that are required. It's just like anything else. It's like a loan officer. A loan officer, let's say during COVID, made $120,000, and the next year they made $55,000, and their biggest question is, well, what happened? Well, you got to work 2 or 3 times harder, like you said, to earn the same amount of money.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you're working for less? No, it's just right now the times are different versus COVID. But if you would have rewinded 4 or 5 years ago, they worked just as hard as they did 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe the rates are a little bit higher, but at the end of the day, people buy and sell houses because of a life decision, marriage, divorce, kids, whatever it may be, but those aren't going to go away. And even last year in our area, our local market, there was 4 sales every hour.
Yeah.
So there's 4 homes sold every single hour in Omaha and Lincoln.
This is after the market had slowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and last year people were saying that, the market fell off the edge. Well, it didn't, because we still had 4 sales an hour. I think last time I looked, there was 6.5 sales per hour in our market. So again, when an agent comes to you and says, well, I didn't sell a house this month. Well, there was 25 or 30 of them sold a day.
Yeah.
It could have been you.
Yeah.
You can't blame the client for that.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad we made that switch to Follow Up Boss too, because of us being able to track.
Yes.
So I just kinked my neck. That sent a whole shock through my whole body. Is us being able to track like their activity, which not everyone wants to be. Again, we talked about this before, the whole micromanaging, but like that is where we are seeing wins. And then you as an agent individually can look at because everyone always thinks and says you're busier than what you really are. I made that comment to you. No, you weren't in this. It was in our leadership team that because you were coming back from your vacation.
Oh, sure.
And like an agent will talk about like, oh, I did this prospecting, I'm super busy. And then when you really look at it, it's like, well, you did an hour's worth of prospecting.
Yep.
You really weren't that busy. Or like I was prospecting. I made some calls to a list of agents. Say, hey, that was the first time I've ever done that.
Yep.
And I went through and it took me 2 hours. 2 hours.
You're probably checking their LinkedIn or Instagram.
I did all of that.
Yeah.
I did all that, which was that the smartest move? No. But I wanted to be somewhat prepared because I targeted certain people that I have worked with, I've had respect for. And
there's certain avatars that we look for. So it's not like you targeted based on, certain parameters, like what they look like. There's certain characteristics you look for.
Yeah, totally. And basically, I was going for people that had been higher up, and then their sales have been down the last couple of years. So I was looking for people like that. Like, okay, they have the ability to get there. Let's help them get back there.
Back to it.
And again, 2 hours. I made 13. I talked to 13 people.
Yep.
That's it. But in my head, I was like, oh man, that was a lot of work. I did a lot. 13 people. That's it.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine agents having that same thing dialogue goes on in their heads.
Totally.
So then being able to track that, look at it. So like that's a pivot for us, like a simple pivot, right?
Oh, totally.
A lot of times it's the simplest things, us pivoting, that can make the biggest impacts.
Yep. John says it all the time. It's tiny hinges swing big doors.
Yeah, totally. So I would say that's probably one of the bigger pivots if we're just talking on agents, is really going deep with how we're presenting this change.
The presentation for buyers, for sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And then our CRM switch.
The CRM switch. And then also being competitive with the services we offer for our listings. Like, so again, you guys put together that package of, okay, for this menu of services, like the top tier, for example, includes us paying for staging.
Yep.
Remulching the house, exterior, right? Us
maybe
offering
window cleaning.
Yeah, window cleaning, or deep cleaning, or
dumpster service.
Yeah, dumpster service. Like all these things that, we just want to be competitive, offer these kind of like a done for you thing too. So we're doing that too to try to be competitive. Obviously, we're doing listing showcases, many of our listings that we can, because that's a nice add-on with Zillow.
Yep.
And, so there's that. And then I think the biggest thing that we're really trying to pivot right now is the iBuy opportunities too.
Uh-huh.
Like, I mean, that's a big opportunity, but we are definitely seeing a change in how and where we're getting opportunities for sure, which I don't even have any answers for that. So that's something we're diving into as well.
I think at the end of the day, it's like the people that are the most successful are the ones that adapt the fastest or the quickest. And I think what we're seeing is people that make a change, right? Instead of second guessing or waiting for someone. I mean, you don't want to sit on the sidelines right now. Now's not the time as a real estate agent, a loan officer, an insurance agent. They're all the same. They're literally all the exact same. There is a goal, which is to get a sale, right? And then there's got to be something that happens, whether you're making a cold call, you're door knocking, you're doing an open house, you're prospecting, you're getting in front of clients. It doesn't matter. But the things that worked last month, last year, 3 years ago, they're not working today. So it's like us moving to the new CRM. You know, we used Sierra before. We used Boomtown before. I mean, people were like, why do you keep changing? Well, one of the things that gives us a benefit for Follow Up Boss is I can see how many times they've called, texted, emailed, and let's say sent videos to somebody. And then I can look at it and go, you know what? Let's just say, Adam, you know what, Adam? You're struggling right now on certain closings. I've given you 50 people, and out of 50 of them, you've only called on average 6.5% of the time, or 6.5 touches, right? So let's say 4 emails and 2 text messages, right? And if I give those exact same leads to, say, Adrian on my team, she does right now about 15, and she's closing 4 times the amount of sales. So your issue with me is the leads are terrible. You're not closing anything. You're making money. And my solution is, well, you're not doing the work that it takes. Or before, I would say, well, I don't know what's going on. And you'd be like, well, I don't know. Nothing's working. I had no data or proof to say that you weren't making enough calls.
Yeah, that's why I'm excited for that too. Because again, we all have this whole paralysis by analysis thing that goes on in our head. I know I'm the king of it. Like, if you ask Stacy, like, I'm an avid note taker. And, you know, I talk about this in therapy, by the way. Like, how can I get through this? Like, you know, and I know I'm a fairly productive dude, but I can't imagine how more productive I could be if I just stop focusing so much on, like, my notes, where they're at, or am I getting my notes checked off, done, versus just where I'm at in that moment, start doing action, and it'll eventually all just come back to me. Like, anything important will come back to me too. Yep. And same thing goes, like, over analyzing who you're calling, how you're doing it, and sometimes just diving into doing an action is way more. Like, me calling the agents, I would have loved to just, if, you know, 2 time lapses by each other, and connections of just non-analyzing it and just analyzing it, like the different what I would have got from it, you know, and
the outcome.
I would have felt like, I'm assuming the outcome on the not overanalyzing, just making call after call after call, having genuine conversations would have been way more impactful as far as the outcome.
Yeah. Well, it's tough too, because also, let's just say you make a call and you do zero research. It might be an absolute bomb of a call and be terrible.
Right? You got to be okay. You got to be okay with the bomb of the call and just move on. Then.
Exactly. Just move on and then call the next person. And you might have analyzed and took 30 minutes and had a better call. But at the end of the day, like, I think, like, I had a call today. We're trying to hire somebody to do this financial analyst position, right? Which is, it's difficult. We've got 5-6 companies, and we're trying to analyze all of the data, because we have all this data, but it's not organized well, right?
Chaos.
Like, so we can bring an agent on, we can know their call, whatever it is, right? But my point is, like, when I called this person today, I didn't know anything about them. They checked the one box that I'm looking for, which is they have experience with analyzing data. So when I called, the first thing I said to him is, I don't know anything about financial analysts. Here's the 5 companies. Here's our problem. Can you solve this problem? And if people run away from it, they're like, oh, that sounds intimidating. That sounds scary. You don't want to hire them anyway.
Yeah.
We only want to hire problem solvers. That's it. And I think it'd be the same thing when calling a real estate agent. If you called a realtor and you researched them for 30 minutes and then you had a good call, are you going to get a better outcome if you just would have winged it? I don't know. What if you called them and just said, hey, I run a real estate team. I don't know if you've heard of us. Have you ever thought about joining a team? That's usually what I say is, hey, I run a team. I don't know if you've heard of us. Have you ever thought about joining a team? I just keep it that simple. And sometimes they're like, I've never heard of you, or I don't know what you're calling about, or I hear negative things about a team. And you just dive in, because I do all this research and they don't answer the phone most of the time anyway.
Yeah. I'm probably going to let you keep making those agent phone calls, by the way.
Well, we'll find out.
I think you're just going to be better at it.
I think the other thing that I've learned recently too is if you continue to focus on your core competencies, and you try to go outside of that, like imagine if I tried to help you with flips, I'd be absolutely terrible because I don't know anything about it, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if I went and I told Stacy what to do, she'd probably shoot me, right? But like my point is like, why would I spend brain power trying to figure out how I can make Stacy more pro? That ain't gonna help me.
Yeah, it's funny too.
You can't dive in her business.
I struggle with that because I always have these like grand ideas, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna. Like, think of me just like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there and I'm talking about it. And, Stacy's listening to me. She goes, why are you doing that? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to help out.
You want to be helpful.
Yeah, I want to be helpful. And she goes, yeah, but you are nowhere near good at that. Like, why, and I'm like, I know. I need to focus on like the one or two things I'm good at, and that's it. And so I go through that too, for sure.
Because you want to be there to help, let's say me or Stacy or we insure or whatever, right? Like you want to help your realtors, right? You're there to be helpful, but sometimes you spend maybe an hour with a client, let's just say a client or a realtor's explaining everything. It's like, I don't know if I can help them. And now I'm an hour into this conversation and now I feel like, what can I help them with?
Yeah.
It's like trying to learn the insurance business. Do I know anything about insurance? Could I learn it? Would it help me be more successful? Probably. But now all of a sudden now I'm an insurance agent.
I feel like we've always ran on like, number one, we always make sure, okay, is the client taken care of? Is that everything's good? Legality wise, paperwork wise, are they taken care of? Yeah. As long as that's good, business stuff can be sloppily run.
Yes.
And I've learned that from like some of the best businesses.
Look at Zillow.
Oh yeah, Zillow is perfect example because they are sloppy with everything.
It's a fantastic company. We love them. I obviously have a great respect for them.
Yeah, but
they're
like
super.
They're always trying things, and that's essentially what we've done. And we're seeing what sticks, right? And then okay, that seems to stick. Let's go deep with that and figure and like break that apart and make it better, right? Or like right now it's like the expense thing. And I got this because I was talking to another associate who does a lot of like in the investing world. He's like, yeah, I don't have any buys right now. He's like, where I used to have 10 always in the pipeline, I might have 2 or 3.
Sure.
So I'm like, well, what are you doing right now? He's like, honestly, I dove in and I started breaking in all my expenses on a monthly basis. And he was able to cut $30-some thousand a month in expenses and wasted expense. And so even as an agent or any business owner, so like, think of something like that. Or is there something you're doing or spending your money on that you could cut to eliminate $1,000 there, and like that can be impactful too. But that's part of like the whole pivoting. Okay, I'm a little slow here. Where do I have time to go dive into something else that would help me in my business as well?
Well, I think the other thing that you said, maybe last year or the year before, I'm trying to remember exactly when it was, but I remember one thing you said is like, if I focus all my energy, this is like we're trying to cut costs and save money. But you're like, if you spend all this time trying to cut some pennies, if you're not focused on generating new revenue, that's a problem. So I'm not saying like neglect the books, obviously. Like
I've always neglected the books. Yeah, I mean that's generally.
Yeah.
Well, it's because there is what's the saying? It's like we always focus on how do you go make more money.
Exactly.
That's always been our focus. We don't focus on cutting the coffee pots from the conversation.
But those coffee pots can add up.
I think it's good to look at that from time to time. But Stacy and I have always been focusing on how do we add more revenue, because your increased revenue, your energy spent on new revenue will definitely outweigh and outpace your expense cutting.
Absolutely.
Like 10 to 1.
Because what some business owners do or realtors is they cut costs, but it actually hurts their revenue generation.
Yes.
That's not what you're saying. What you're saying is like, for example, we have 2 CRMs. Let's say we were signed up for 3 of them and we don't use one of them.
Well, to give you an example, like when the buddy I was talking to, what he did, I'm not talking he went and legit cut costs. What he did is he spent time and was like, listen, he brought his property management in-house. Well, that saved him like $10,000 a month.
Because he was spending external costs.
Correct. Yep. And then another one, he went and redid all of his insurance on all of his properties.
Sure.
And he goes, that saved him by getting new insurance quotes on all of his properties. I think he did higher deductible, so it lowered his monthly. And he goes, I never file claims anyway. Mm-hmm. And that saved him another like $5,000 a month. It's things like that. I'm not saying he was cutting costs. He was just like, hey, I'm spending money here. is there a different way I can look at this to do it do a little differently? So that's what he did there.
So that's just smart cutting, right? Like a lot of businesses will just eliminate whole branches or most people, what they do is they cut back on advertising when things get tough, when you should be spending double or triple on advertising.
We normally go
training,
more.
So
it's funny because we're trying to spend more on advertising, and it's like we have everything bought up unless we jump into like billboards or radio or something like that.
Yeah. So it's just, I think it's like, at the end of the day, I think you've got to make sure that what you're doing is smart, intelligent, right? Like, I think the point of this podcast, again, today's topic is pivot or die, but we kind
of went all over the place.
We kind of, like our podcast, we pivot kind of depending on the conversation, but I think what's so valuable is constantly looking at like what's working, what's not working, and doing self-reflection, right? I feel like that's kind of a lost art, is doing self-reflection on even yourself or your own business, because
it's funny you say that. I was going to bring that up last, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So it's because again, when I was on vacation, I was doing self-reflection of like, where's my time spent? Where's my time lost? Where can I be more productive? Like a lot of the people that we're on the trip with, we're engaging in drinking and having fun and partying, and I was spending time downstairs listening to books and writing notes, like how I could be more productive.
You had like a guilt feeling, like, gosh, what am I doing?
Yeah,
like,
I did. I felt guilty when I was there. I was only thinking about my 2 little girls and coming back and helping you, right, and the rest of the people that I work with. Like, I felt guilty. Like, how can I help Adrian be more successful, or Zach, or Liz, or how can I get more? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But I think I was feeling guilty because at the end of the day, my brain is not going to be like Andy's or Stacy's or Adam's or Adrian's, right? Like, we all have a different way of thinking, and my brain doesn't go towards resting, relaxing, neutral. Like, I move the goalposts. We talk about this all the time. I don't care if we do 1,000 houses this year. I'm not going to be happy until we get to 4,000, and then I'm going to be depressed again because it's not 5 or 8,000, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And we actually, one of our businesses is one of the most profitable businesses right now. I won't say which one. Is one of the most profitable businesses in the market, and I'm still not happy with it.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You always want more. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just,
But I think that's in like most drivers. I'm not saying a lot of people have that.
Sure.
Saying, but in your true business owners, entrepreneur spirit type people, that's a very common theme. Yeah, totally. But the self-reflection thing, I think that's important too.
What do you want to talk about on that?
Well, I went on a hike with some buddies yesterday morning. And, one thing that we always do is we go through and like, most of these guys in this group, they don't drink. I don't drink that much anymore, hardly at all. Every time I do, it's like, why'd I do that? So like me, and I don't even crave it. I used to crave it. Right. So like really deep diving on like, what are things that are holding you back in life? I think analyzing that, like, why do you feel certain feelings? And like me, like I never deep dived my thoughts, like ever. And I did, I'm fortunate enough to where I can go to therapy twice a month and talk about that stuff. And that has helped me a ton. But like figuring out things that are holding you back in life. Maybe it is a relationship. Maybe it's like, for me, it was drinking. Definitely was holding me back. I went on TRT, like, I openly talk about anything I've done. Like I went on testosterone replacement and that messed me up too.
And how many guys, really quick, when we went to that conference, it was like everybody. Remember
Everyone
that?
was on it. Everyone was on it.
Many...
And like, I have naturally low testosterone but it doesn't like affect me and my energy or anything like that. So it's like, but I thought in my head, well, I have low testosterone, I should get on it. Well, it messed me up. Like I started acting more irrational and I wasn't thinking clearly. That's the same effect that alcohol has on me.
Yep.
So now, like the thing, for me right now, where I'm deep diving on is I need to get my sugar intake under control.
I know you've been talking about that
because, and
especially added sugars.
Added sugars, like that is hard for me right now. Very, very hard. Alcohol was hard. Like I don't crave it anymore, but it took me probably a good year to break that craving.
Well, it's like, addicting.
When I see someone have an old fashioned, like, I used to be like, oh, that old fashioned, that looks good. That looks so good. I want that old fashioned or a Bloody Mary. Like, those are my 2 drinks that I love. And I look at them, I'm like, cool, we're good, good for them.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm at with sugar right now. Because I know for me, that's holding me back, and it gives me brain fog. It messes with my clarity, and then it messes with my sleep. So it all to me, it goes to sleep.
Yep.
What kind of sleep you're getting. And as I approach 40, I really start processing this stuff. Like, I got to get good sleep. I got to get good sleep. And if I don't, not getting good sleep can mess me up for days after that night of not getting good sleep. So I think that's the stuff. For me, it's like going deep with that stuff. What are the things that in my life that are affecting me negatively that I can try to eliminate or change to help me with my, because then it helps you with all your relationships around you too. And it helps you perform better too. But most of it's like what's going in your body.
Yep. It's crazy how much that, I mean, think about John, what he talks about with just your physical fitness, right? And your health. I mean, he spends a lot of time talking about it. I always thought it was crazy. I'm like, oh, it makes any sense. It makes complete sense.
It's the one thing you can control. And then when you're doing that, it really does affect your mindset hugely. Like I know I can go lose an extra 30 pounds of unwanted like belly fat. And but I know the sugar is the thing that's holding me back from that.
Hard. I love sugar.
But I know when you're eating right, you're feeling right, what you're putting in your body, getting good sleep, like those are all things that just help you operate better.
Yep.
Versus like, it's the poison that's going to your body too.
Well, and Warren Buffett says this, and you guys can look this up. You can look up the car analogy from Warren, and he says, you buy a nice car, you feel really good about it. Name the brand, it doesn't matter. BMW, Jaguar, whatever, right? I have a Tesla, I like that. But you buy a brand new car, and then somebody gets into your car, and they throw something on the ground, and you're like, what the heck? I just got this car, man. Like, don't eat my car, right? Or dirt or mud, or they throw a bottle on the ground, whatever, and they stain your car. You're like, what the heck, right? Like, that's what Warren talks about is you have one body that has to bring you to either list to 70 or 80 or 100, and everything you put inside of it, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or sugar, or whatever it is, these things we put inside are affecting our car or our body, and that's why it's underperforming.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, Warren's pretty smart, and obviously he knows what he's talking about. But I thought that was a good analogy. I mean,
yeah, totally.
So think of your body as a car that you just bought, and you can't, unfortunately, you could get a new car. You cannot get a new body. You can try to replace certain things, but for the most part today, there's certain things you can't replace in your body.
Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating.
Are you have anything you're trying to cut?
So alcohol for me, I've tried for a couple of years, and I've been pretty good at it.
You've been really good at it.
I've been really good at it, but
you drink a lot of those Topicas.
Yeah, I like to, so now you get obsessed about sparkling waters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but again, now sparkling waters are bad, and they make you eat more weight or eat more food too. So it's not. But anyway, one thing I'm trying, which I told you a couple weeks ago, is I'm trying to also work on sugar, especially added sugar, because I love cakes and ice creams and pie. I love dessert. But
bear claws or apple fritters.
Apple fritters.
Apple fritters.
But that's what I'm kind of focused on right now. I told Amanda recently, I'm like, I want to try to still have cheat days where I'm eating, unhealthy sugars or desserts, because I also don't want to like not enjoy what I eat. But I'm going to try to cut back on certain added sugars and replace it with fruit, say it's like a kiwi or strawberry or grapes, but I'd rather have a fruit.
Blueberries are the best.
Those are good too. And they're good for your brain.
Well, they're good for you is what I mean.
Yeah. Well, and they're anti-inflammatory too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
So it's
a lot of good benefits.
Yeah.
So you're doing the no sugar too.
I'm trying. I'm not saying I was good. Trust me. I had a lot of cheesecake on this trip, but the more you realize that your brain fog or you're so tired at the end of the day, and it's not because you're working hard, it's because of what you're putting in your body. So the days where I don't have a lot of sugar, I have way more energy than the days, and it's not like I'm doing less, but it's just the sugar is killing me.
Yeah. And the other thing we talked about right before is like consumerism.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm really bad with consumerism, social media. Like I buy a lot of stuff a lot of stuff I don't need. I mean, I'll use it, but it's like, did I really need this? Like I bought these wedge stains for like squatting. I'm like, I really didn't need those. Or, I can give many examples of that kind of stuff. So consumerism is another thing that's like kind of a negative suck in life too.
Well, you think you'll be happier by having it, but you end up not, whether it's an outfit or something to help you work out or I don't know.
My multiple Whoop bands I have, different color options.
Well, there's times where your Whoop will tell you like, I don't know how you're alive.
Yeah, totally.
Because they'll talk about your sleep or your drinking or eating.
Get to bed quickly or you might die.
So it's just, it's always interesting because there's so many things that the world thinks you need to have. And I don't know, it's just, it doesn't bring you any benefits.
Yeah. So recap again, we talked about a bunch of different topics there on the pivoting or dying, and obviously we can go deeper with a lot of that stuff too. But it will be very interesting to see what happens on the NAR stuff. But again, I think to shorten it is we're trying to help people eliminate the fluff and just focus on the few things that we know, like that's what they need to be able to do. But that's even going to like health-wise too.
Yep.
So
it's just make sure that you focused on what really impacts your life. Make sure you have the right people around you. That was another thing I learned on this vacation was I had some people around me that I necessarily I do not want to be associated with, right?
Like you wish them well, but you're like, hey, they're not helping me get to the next stage where I want to go.
And that sounds bad to say. I mean, they're great people. It just sounds bad to say, but the mindset is so polluted from social media or who you're around. I mean, you could hang around a bad person and 2 hours in, you could be like, oh man, you're right. This, the government's after me or the world's after me.
Oh, it's easy it's so easy how people are easily influenced.
Exactly.
And I've seen that for years in my team environment.
Well, it goes with consumerism.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's one little seed gets planted and it goes into this weed essentially. So it's definitely like Stacy and I have seen that big time over the years. And it's just like, how the heck did that happen? I know I'm guilty of it too, but yeah, crazy.
So it's just that. But yeah, make sure you focus on, staying nimble in this kind of time, in this market. That goes for all businesses. Every business right now is at a challenge from a technology standpoint, from a financial standpoint, because of costs, and also because of employees want to get paid a certain amount. I mean, everybody needs a certain amount. I mean, you look at somebody like, again, a law change where you have to pay somebody an hourly wage, and they got rid of all the employees and they added AI.
Inflation, it's just tough.
It is tough. So appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully this was something that added value, and we'll see you soon.